I was like, it's fitting we're doing it now, this weekend in particular, because it was a year ago. I'm telling my perspective on this.
Yeah.
It was a year ago. I was coming up to Boston. I had this trip planned. My wife was out of town. I was going to take my kids to my best friend's house in Cohasset. And I called Austin Ainge and I said, hey, dude, Sunday morning, can we go play golf at Old Sandwich? He's like, absolutely, would love to host you. Friday night, I get a call from Brad. You had been named interim head coach.
Yep.
And you happened to join the foursome and try to convince me to come join the staff. And I feel like most of that 4.5 hour round and the subsequent lunch was us talking about what my role would be and all this stuff. And maybe I did ask you this, but those few days from being named interim head coach to the start of training camp, media day, all that stuff, what were your emotions? What was going through your head during those few days?
Well, first I thought we had a chance at getting you. And then we go through the clubhouse to walk out and you're like, so when does training camp start? And I was like, Monday. And it was Friday. And so I was like, this guy put all this thought into wanting to coach. He doesn't even know when the season starts.
It was training camp started Tuesday. I go, what do you need me here? It was a Sunday morning. And you go,
Sunday. It was Sunday.
Yeah, and you go Tuesday. And I go, huh.
And I was like, he ain't coming.
No, it was funny because I caught myself mid round, and I wasn't wasting your time.
I knew you were.
Like, I gave it some serious thought, and when you called me when Damon left in the middle of the season, I gave that some serious thought too. But I caught myself mid round because Austin goes, "What other golf stuff do you have coming up?" And I go, "I'm playing Pine Valley on the 17th."
Yes.
And then I was like, I looked at you and you kind of were like, oh, this dude.
It was a good time. I knew you weren't wasting time. Like I thought it was an authentic. I appreciate it. Look, like the decision to go into coaching is hard. Like people go into coaching for different reasons, and so it's definitely a choice that has a major impact on every facet of your life. It affects everybody, especially when you have wife, kids. And so just the fact that we got to spend that time together, I thought it paid off in the long run, and I think it will make for like a better conversation today.
For sure. So back to your emotions.
It's funny that I never do well when I have a lot of time to think. Like that's like where I'm not great. In some areas. And so the fact that got the call, boom, training camp in 4 days, it's almost like you go into like survival mode. Like you don't have time to think about anything except like what's the most important thing right now. Like this training camp, we had our coaches retreat and stuff. And like I drew up the practice plans like a month ago and then I deleted the document. And it's like we redid it yesterday. Whereas last year it was just like, all right, these are the most important things on day one. Like we're just doing that. These are the objectives. And so it's almost like you just kind of went into like, you don't have time for anything other than figuring out what's most important and going from there. So it actually kind of helped me a little bit in year one of like, if I went into a situation in year one and I had to think a lot, I think it would have been a little bit like, do we do this? Do we do that? So it wasn't too bad. I think it was more about how was it going to affect my wife, my family. Cause I get home, it's like 10 o'clock. I had to meet with Brad. And, she's upstairs, like, making the bed. And I walk in and I just have a look on my face. And I'm like, we're the interim coach of the Celtics. And she's like, shut the F up. And I was like, no, we are, really. And, like, she didn't even know what to say. Usually when something like that happens and it kind of throws into your family, like, it can be negative. But I think that situation, from that moment on the entire year, it brought our marriage closer and our family closer. And I thought that was like the coolest part.
Is she from New England too?
No, she's from West Virginia.
Okay. All right. Got it. So you're saying because of the timing, it actually was a benefit. So your head wasn't spinning at all.
It wasn't spinning at all. Like I knew I was going to struggle. Like I wasn't sitting there saying like, oh, I'm ready. I got this all figured out. Like I was like, okay, like I know I'm going to screw up here. I know I'm not going to be perfect. I know practice isn't going to go great some days, but I think what made it a little bit more comfortable was I had been here for 3 years. I had built relationships with the players, with the organization. I had worked for Brad as an assistant. And so I was able to use a lot of the data that I already had to kind of just go forward. Yeah. So I wasn't definitely like, oh, I got this all figured out. I was like, okay, like this is going to be really hard. But I tried not to think too far ahead. Like I was just like, I'm only going to worry about now to training camp ends. And then when training camp ends, we'll just figure out like the first 20 games and then we'll see what happens. Like I didn't know I don't even know what we won. Like what was our record? I have no idea.
57?
No, I'm saying that like 20 game mark. We were we went on that run.
Right.
Had no idea that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, so it's almost.
I think you were 18-2, weren't you?
Something like that.
Yeah,
but like, it's when you have no expectations, it actually makes things a little bit easier sometimes, as opposed to having expectations and then your expectations not getting met.